morning. I am Josh with Connect Church here in Farmington, Minnesota. We are part of the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. Thanks for joining me this, it is May 3rd, 2020. We are online for another Sunday, and judging by the governor's orders, we will be online for close to about another month or so throughout the rest of May. We're working hard though on making plans to get back together physically, but we're also going to continue as we get back together physically, continuing our online messages and our online presence. Please take a moment just to like us on Facebook. If you're following us here on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. That way you will get the latest updates and you can see the latest videos that come out. If you're joining us for the first time also on Facebook, do not hesitate. Please go ahead and just drop us a line in the comments. Let us know that you are here, and you are important to us. You're important to Jesus, and we want to make sure we are connecting with you. Kids, not right after this, but at 10:45 a.m., you will have your Kid Min time. You're actually going to get a scavenger hunt today, so you don't want to miss that. Be there right at 10:45. Adults, be sure to join us as well, because after the Kid Min time on Zoom, we're going to be celebrating communion together. So be sure you have your communion elements ready to go right around 10:45, and we'll follow the kids, and we will have our communion. And kids, you'll have your blessing time as well. Just a reminder as well that we dive into what we talk about this morning a little bit more in depth on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom. If you'd like to join us, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will give you the link. We'll get you the link to that Zoom meeting. Lastly, you are always welcome. Actually, you're encouraged to reach out to us. Whether it's through Facebook or Messenger, or feel free to call or text the church. If you need prayer, want to hear about Jesus, or just need a listening ear, that's what we're here for, and we'd love to connect with you. So thank you for joining us here this morning, and we are going to turn now to our message time.
I think my eyes are getting better. Instead of a big dark blur, I see a big light blur. There's nothing to see. I used to live here, you know.
You're gonna die here, you know. Convenient.
Just stick close to Chewie and Lando. They're taking care of everything.
Oh, great.
Plans and people go sideways. Our best laid plans get upended. We looked at that last week. It is one thing to have your plans go sideways, be upended, to be replaced by a different or another or an alternate route. Instead of this, that. Instead of zigging, I'm zagging. It's another thing to have the future itself be uncertain, to be unsure of what the future itself holds. That's something else. What do I do when the future itself is uncertain? How do I move through this? Take for instance the high school senior who's deciding whether to go to, say, the U or Minnesota State at Mankato. This or that. It is something else altogether to be a high school senior right now and wondering if their colleges and universities are going to be open at all this coming fall. Right now, the future is uncertain. We just don't know what it's going to look like. The answer to a lot of these questions right now is a simple, I don't know. Nobody knows. How do we face an uncertain future? The Apostle Paul faces just about the most uncertain future that a person could possibly face. Life or death, execution or freedom. Paul is literally unsure if he will be alive in the near future. He is facing the ultimate uncertainty, but he thinks differently, and it changes everything. We're going to see how this applies to us today. So let's look. We are in Philippians chapter 1, And I'm going to be just reading just 2 verses to start us with this morning, verses 19 and 20 of chapter 1. And I'm going to be reading, again, switching it up to the NIV this morning, the New International Version. The text will be on the screen in front of you, but feel free if you've got a Bible to open up. So I'm going to look here. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice. For I know that through your prayers and God's provision of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, what has happened to me will turn out for my deliverance. And I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage, so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. Paul rejoices. He rejoices even while in prison, because he is certain that this entire situation in which he finds himself will turn out for his vindication. The NIV translates it as deliverance, but it's probably not deliverance or salvation in the sense of getting out or released from prison, although Paul does expect that, and he touches on that a little bit later, and we'll look at that this morning. But here it's probably in the sense of, this is going to turn out for my vindication. And Paul is quoting here in verse 19 directly from the Old Testament book of Job. Verse 19, this will turn out for my vindication or deliverance. See, Job sought God's vindication after being accused by his friends, by being accused of wrongdoing. Like Job, perhaps Paul sees that envisions or sees himself being vindicated by God after being wrongly accused by the Roman tribunal. God will vindicate Paul. He will say, not guilty, as he is being accused, or as he hears the verdict being read by God. Regardless of the actual outcome of the trial, whether it's life or death, Paul will be vindicated by God. Paul expects and hopes that in no way, he says, that he will be shamed through this actual trial, this Roman tribunal. And it's not ashamed or a feeling of shame or embarrassment, an emotional feeling, but it's shamed in the sense of bringing dishonor to God. Paul does not want to bring dishonor to God in the way that he behaves, or the way that he conducts himself, or what he says in this trial. Instead, Paul knows that Christ will be magnified and glorified, whether in life or in death, through this trial. Maybe Paul's seeing something like, when Jesus died on the cross, one of the soldiers exclaimed, truly this man was the Son of God. And maybe Paul sees that in himself, that if he were to be executed, one of the soldiers or his executioner would say, truly, this man Paul was telling the truth about Jesus because of how he conducted himself, what he said, and how he died. I don't know, just a guess, but maybe Paul envisions something like that whatever the outcome of this trial, he will be vindicated and Christ will be glorified. Paul's future is uncertain. He might die, he might live. Excuse me, kicking the table here. Many of us face uncertain futures right now. Will I have a job? Will I be able to pay my bills? When is school going to start back up? What will school look like when it does start back up? Is it going to be online? What will the future hold? What will the future look like? Some of our medical workers, our frontline workers, are facing uncertain futures, literally with life and death decisions, both for their patients, for themselves, and for their families. In the midst of uncertainty like this, Paul says, I rejoice. How? How can Paul be so cool and collected in the midst of such uncertainty? Well, Paul is already thinking differently. This isn't annoyingly blind optimism. We all probably know those people. Hopefully you're not one of those people that are just annoyingly optimistic and blind to whatever's down the road. But verse 22, verse 21, Paul clues us into how he can be so optimistic. Verse 21, for to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Or living is Christ, dying is gain. That's pretty much Paul's credo in life. He thinks differently about life and death. The very essence of Paul's life was Jesus Christ. Ever since that fateful day on the road to Damascus, Paul's life revolves around Jesus of Nazareth. It wasn't something Paul did on the side or when he had time or even something to add a bit of value and spice to his life. It wasn't a prayer that he said before he went to bed or before he ate a meal. And it wasn't even just about getting saved. It was about life itself. You know, we say things like work to live or live to fish or I live to cycle or baseball is life or live life to the fullest. I mean, think about it. Everything we do everything that we can to hold on to life, and to an extent, rightfully so. Life is a gift from God. Don't waste it, treat it shabbily, disregard it, or take it. At the same time, we often think of life as like the ultimate end. Hang on to it with all you've got. Extend it at any way possible. Trade anything for it. Sacrifice anything for it. Extend it at all cost. Suck as much value and worth from it as possible. Live it to the max. Party like it's 1999. YOLO. Now, there is some truth to this, but Paul encourages us to think differently about life, particularly life with an uncertain future. See, I think Paul certainly lived life to the fullest. I think he did live it like it was 1999, but he did it with a different way of thinking. It was all about Jesus and how life pointed to Jesus, and he used his life to focus on Jesus. That's a wake-up call for me. Can I say this is true, that living itself is Christ? Living is Christ? That's something worth considering. Reflect on that this week. How can I make sure that everything I do is about Jesus? Everything I'm doing some way points to Jesus. You know, this is how Paul thinks about an uncertain future. Let's continue to look here in verse 22 through 26. I'm not going to read that, but just summarize it here. And you can read that at home on your own, or, well, you are at home. But Paul says in verse 22 through verses 26, if I live and get out of prison, I can do more work for Jesus. Because there is still so much work to be done, particularly in you, Philippians, in your church. On the other hand, if I'm executed, if I'm killed by the Romans, I get to be with Christ. I gain him. You know, if living is Christ, dying is so much more, because I gain Christ. I get to be with him. I must admit, Paul says, being with Christ is more attractive to me. I mean, consider the kind of life that Paul lived. He talks about being beaten and shipwrecked and stoned and whipped and all sorts of things. You know, but Paul ends up saying, in the end, I'm convinced that I will get out of this, that I will live through this trial, because there is so much more work to be done. And I'll see you all again soon. So Paul thought he was going to be released. But we see Paul thinking through this, and as he thinks differently, it always comes back to Jesus. How can I glorify him, whether in life or in death? Jesus is the certainty amidst the uncertainty of life or death. And that's our point for this morning. All right, so if you're writing things down or whatever, this is it. When facing an uncertain future, affix yourself to something certain. When facing an uncertain future, affix yourself to something certain. Attach yourself to something certain when facing an uncertain future. See, we often do the opposite and cling to things that are uncertain themselves. It's like being on a sinking ship. It's like being on the Titanic and thinking that you can survive by clinging to the mast of the sinking ship. You're going down with it, all right? Affix yourself to something certain in the midst of an uncertain future. And you can see this now. We have leaders making and breaking their careers and businesses based upon their reaction to the coronavirus pandemic. The people need and want to attach themselves to something or someone that is trustworthy, solid, certain, particularly when the future is uncertain. And we can see that right now. See, Paul has affixed himself to something certain when he faces a very uncertain future. He has attached himself to Jesus Christ, who is rock solid in life or in death, because Jesus overcame death itself. So Paul can face an uncertain future, an uncertain trial with great courage because he has affixed himself to Jesus Christ. All right. Now, again, Paul expects to be released from prison, but he is prepared for both outcomes. He is prepared for life. He is prepared for death. Kind of like a compass. That no matter how dizzy you get, we were walking the other day, actually last week, and the neighbors were out in their driveway. Where you play that game, you put your head down to the knob of the baseball bat and you spin around and then you try to run straight. I don't know what they were doing, but they were doing that in their front yard, and it was funny to watch them stumbling all over the place. No matter how dizzy you get, no matter how disoriented you get, no matter how many times you go in circles, no matter how foggy it gets outside and you can't see where you're going, the compass always points north. Affix yourself to something certain in the midst of uncertainty. If you're a bit older, if you're my age or so, you might remember the mid-90s movie Twister. Anybody remember that? If you are, give us a thumbs up in the comments below if you're joining us on Facebook. In one scene towards the end of the movie, Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton are fleeing on foot from this massive tornado that's chasing them, and they run to this tool shed. And I think they use belts or something. Their belts to affix themselves to the piping that's coming out of the ground so that they won't be swept away by this big tornado that devastates and that demolishes this tool shed that they're in. Now it's rather improbable and ridiculous to the point of humor, but it provides a good visual for us. Affix yourself to something certain in the midst of uncertainty. It's about the certainty of Jesus and bringing him glory and honor and all that we do in life or in death. And this is how we navigate an uncertain future. This is really important right now. Attach yourself to something uncertain when facing an uncertain future. I got Gorilla Glue here. What's your attaching method of choice? Gorilla Glue and duct tape. Great adhesives. Anybody watch Red Green? That's not on anymore, but you can, if you don't know who Red Green is, as a Minnesotan, if you're joining us here in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, it is your duty to know who or what Red Green is. You need to get on YouTube today and find out who Red Green is. Red Green, the Canadian expert in all things duct tape. Red can fix anything with duct tape. Whatever your method of fixing or of fixing things or attaching things, whatever your method is, attach yourself to something certain. See, many people right now, unfortunately, are attaching things to things that just aren't healthy, even that aren't going to last. Don't fall into that trap right now. Way too many people are attaching themselves to things unhealthy in the midst of an uncertain future. COVID-19 is drastically increasing alcohol sales. Alcohol sales in the month of March in the United States were up 55%. Yikes, 55%. Experts worry that the opioid addiction is going to get worse over the pandemic. We don't and shouldn't need alcohol and opioids to get through this time of uncertainty. There's nothing wrong with, alcohol per se, but when you're using it as a necessity or as a crutch, something to rely on to get you through uncertain times, then we've got a problem. It's not the healthy answer. It's not the right answer to stress, to uncertainty, to loneliness, to anxiety, to boredom. That's a sinking ship. That's it's attaching yourself to the ship that's going down. Okay? The certainty of Jesus provides hope in an uncertain future. Attach yourself to something certain in an uncertain future. So how is this possible? That's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do I attach myself to Jesus? How do I attach myself to something certain in an uncertain future? Well, Paul tells that. Verse 19, we kind of just breezed through that earlier, but verse 19, Paul says, "For I know that through your prayer," actually, he attaches an S to that in the NIV. Through your prayer, and God's provision or supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. Paul depends upon the prayer of the Philippians in the Spirit, the supply of the Spirit of Jesus Christ. So to us, prayer in the Spirit enables us to think differently about the uncertainty of the future, and it enables us as well to fix ourselves to Jesus of Nazareth. Pray for each other. I am praying for you. I am praying for you. Pray for each other. Drop us a comment here. Join into this conversation and we will pray for you. I promise that. And this, as we pray for each other, and as we are supplied with the Spirit, we can utter the same words as Paul. Living is Christ and dying is gain. And we are all somewhere in this faith journey. We are all at different places. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all. But yet all of us need to attach ourselves to something certain in the midst of uncertainty. Right? That certain thing is Jesus and Jesus' people, the church, when facing an uncertain future. Maybe you just need a few words of encouragement and continued prayer. Maybe that's all you need right now. Maybe you're pretty well attached to Jesus, But maybe this whole conversation is new to you. I don't even really know Jesus. I don't even know about him. I need to just think through and talk with somebody about Jesus, period. I don't have any idea where to start. Maybe on the other hand, you're a little bit shaky on this whole thing. That is fine wherever you are. The step is to let us know about that. Okay? Drop us a line so we can continue this conversation, so that we can pray for you, so that we can be in touch with you and help you along. There's not much we can do if you don't drop us a line, especially now that we are online, that we can't physically communicate with each other. All right. So Facebook is great. Instant messages is great. Call us, email, text. Let us know in the comments just below. Paul relies upon the prayer of the Philippians. Okay. You need connection with the church to help your connection with Jesus Christ. All right. You've got to be connected with other Christians. That's part of this. All right. You can join us right here on Zoom at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And that's part of being connected with other Christians and connecting more with Christ. I'd encourage you to do that. 7 p.m. on Zoom. If you need that link, reach out to us and we will get you that link. All right. Join us. Help affix yourself to something certain in a future of uncertainty. So what does tomorrow hold? What are things going to look like in another 6 weeks? How is coronavirus going to shape the way we live our lives long term? I don't know. No one knows at this point. The future is uncertain, even more than usual. So fix yourself to something certain, Jesus. The thing about affixing yourself to Jesus is, it doesn't remove the uneasiness of an uncertain future. That's the beauty of what Paul has just written. We see a little bit of that uneasiness come through, and it's kind of refreshing. It doesn't remove the uneasiness, but it does allow Paul, and it allows you, and it allows me to face an uncertain future with courage and hope. And we need that right now. Affix yourself to something certain in the midst of uncertainty. Okay? Affix yourself to something certain this morning in the midst of an uncertain future. That does it for us this morning. Kids, join us in about 20 minutes or so for KidMin on Zoom. The link is below in the comments. Adults, join us too at this KidMin. We'll pick up after the children are done, and we'll have a chat to dive in a little bit more this morning. We can even pray for you during that time. All right? Take a step. The next step, as soon as we're done here, reach out to us if you need help affixing yourself to Jesus this morning, okay? Fixing yourself to something certain in an uncertain future. Reach out to us or to a Christian friend, okay? Let us know so that we can pray for you and help you in this journey. All right? So, peace to all of you, and love, and with faith from God in Jesus Christ, our Lord. Grace to all of you who love the Lord Jesus Christ with undying love. May you have a wonderful week. We'll see you in a few minutes, and hopefully on Wednesday night. Blessings.